I truly and sincerely cannot believe what the fuck I just read. Last night, following Miami's loss to Virginia in college football action, Hurricanes head coach Manny Diaz was quoted as saying, "We were on the verge of something very special and came up just short." Here in 2021, Manny Diaz's idea of something very special is nearly beating fucking Virginia. I know Manny Diaz bleeds Miami. He absolutely loves that university. He loves that city. He loves that team. He's very ingrained in that community. He is once upon a time, a big part of Miami's success as a defensive coordinator. Now, success, not what we're used to seeing, not what we saw under Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, even Larry Coker, but he did some okay things at Miami. Not as a head coach, as a coordinator. But this head coaching experiment, whatever the fuck you want to call it, tenure, I hate saying this because you know what? I understand these coaches at the end of the day are human beings too that are just trying to make a living. Granted, they get paid far more than most of us will ever see, but they're people trying to support their family. So I don't like saying this shit, but it's time for Miami to make a change, man. This is not the state of U football. A moral victory because they almost beat a team that in their heyday they would have run off the field. By the way, even not in their heyday, they've won 5 of their last 6 against Virginia, but it's a moral victory because they almost beat them. They almost beat them last night. By the way, in Diaz's tenure, they've lost 5 straight games to Power 5 conference schools. They have not won a game against a ranked opponent in over 1 year. They've only won 2 under Diaz. And their meetings against ranked teams have ended badly. We're talking ass whoopings that were completely uncompetitive. I think the only game they lost to a ranked team that was semi-competitive was their bowl game last year against Oklahoma State, where they lost by 3. They got the crap kicked out of them by Clemson. They got just absolutely taken out behind the woodshed by North Carolina. Alabama kicked the shit out of them in week 1. Michigan State beat the piss out of them. This is the state of Miami football, getting the snot kicked out of you by ranked teams. I remember a point in time in Hurricane football where, it wasn't uncommon to see them lose to ranked teams. Shit happens, but at least they made it a fight. There was no fight with them against Alabama. There was no fight with them against Michigan State. They basically rolled over against North Carolina. They rolled over against Clemson. And look, there's no shame in losing to any of those teams. But not in one-sided ass-kickings. By the way, speaking of inexcusable, things that are inexcusable, this program lost to Florida fucking International under Manny Diaz. This team lost to Duke. Oh, and by the way, their first bowl game under Diaz, the Independence Bowl, I've seen more fight put up by junior high school kids in a fucking 2-hand touch game at recess or at gym class. They went out there and completely shit the bed, showed no pulse, no heart. They look like they would have been anywhere else on planet Earth but that game. And again, it was against Louisiana fucking Tech. I know the argument I'll get when people hear this video. But JP, who do they got? And I know there's some people that will agree with me on this, and they will throw unrealistic names like Urban Meyer out there. Urban Meyer's not leaving the Jaguars for the U. And no, I don't think that Meyer is long for the NFL. I don't. I think the more they lose, the more he clearly looks frustrated, the more he looks like he's just ready to get the fuck out of Dodge. Okay? I don't see him still being around as head coach of the Jaguars at Thanksgiving. But it ain't Miami he's leaving for. Okay? That USC job is low-hanging fruit. He spent a few years in LA. He loves it there. I think he's still got a house there. I think he's going to realize this college game is my world. This NFL game, not so much. And he's going to do unto the Jaguars what Bobby Petrino did unto the Falcons a decade ago. And he's going to leave before the end of the season. And frankly, look, I'm seeing what Meyer's doing as a head coach. I'm seeing what Meyer's doing as a, executive call. Perhaps that's for the best. But again, he's not coming to Miami. And I think it's fair to say you could pretty much rule Mario Cristobal out too. I mean, I know Cristobal loves Miami. I know he is a staple of that city. He's a South Florida guy through and through. Miami ain't competing with Phil Knight's money. Okay. And due respect, at this point, I will generously say at best, Miami is a lateral move from Oregon. At best. And I'm probably being exceptionally generous by saying that. Yeah, there are coaches out there, though. There are coaches Miami could legitimately get. Just understand, if your bar, if the bar you've got that you're expecting and anything else is a disappointment, is Meyer or Cristobal, prepare to be disappointed. Prepare to be very disappointed. But the bottom line is Miami has to move on from Diaz because I'm looking at their remaining schedule from here. Yeah, they've got some winnable games. But I'm looking at best 6-6 heading into their bowl game. 6-6. Okay, this is a Miami team where anything below 9 wins was considered a fucking bad year. They're looking at 6-6, which, by the way, they were 6-7 in year one under Diaz. Time to move on. So who did they look at? Who are some of the coaches? I said who's not coming. Who are some of the coaches that they would have a legitimate chance of landing? Jamie Chadwell, Coastal Carolina, very realistic. Doing good things there. Billy Napier of Louisiana, I'm going to put him firmly in the maybe category. I mean, I don't think he's tied in a long term to Louisiana anyway. I think he's out at the right opportunity. The guy was pretty much desperate for the South Carolina job last year, but they passed on him for Shane Beamer. So I think there's one. Some might throw the name Gus Malzahn out there. And August, I'd have said, yeah, probably. But now that Central Florida is headed to a Power 5 conference, the Big 12, and that's happening sooner rather than later. Trust me on that. I don't think UCF's going to be in the AAC past 2023. I think they'll be in well before that. So he's headed to a Power 5 again. I think, I'm not saying it's not an upgrade for him to go to Miami, but he's actually got a pretty good thing in Orlando. I could see him staying there, but we'll throw that name out there. You want to make a splash? And I know this man is not, he left Ole Miss in disgrace. I get it. But he's paid his dues. And frankly, look, ethically, I don't agree with what he did. I don't. But we're not talking an Art Briles here. We're not talking a Jerry Sandusky. We're not talking a unforgivable offense that makes this person somebody that should be blacklisted and ostracized from ever coaching again. And believe me, Art Briles is pretty close to that. I mean, the fact that Southern Miss wouldn't touch this guy as an offensive coordinator ought to tell you all you need to know. But Hugh Freeze, again, yeah, I get it. Might cause some people to scrunch up their noses. I know people sit there and say, well, what kind of message is this guy that's teaching our young men when he's placing calls for escort services and trying to get a fucking booty call? Okay, you know what? Again, he should have lost his job. He absolutely should have. Ole Miss was in their right to move on. But I think he's paid his dues. And like I said, I've seen far greater transgressions go down. To me, there comes a point in time where a Power 5 school say, look, you've done what you needed to do to make right by society. Come on back. Could that be Miami? Sure. Would he come to Miami? It's possible. I mean, I don't think Liberty's ever going to get that Power 5, invite. The question I wonder now at this point, though, is are there other schools, especially one that's 7.5 hours away, that might be thinking the same thing? Because God knows Mike Norvell's not exactly setting the world on fire up there. You're talking, Miami's looking at 6 wins. At this point, I'll be surprised if Norvell gets 3 this year. In fact, the only 2 games on their schedule left that look like definite wins are fucking UMass and maybe Syracuse this week, maybe. But anyway, Freeze is a guy to pay attention to. Bill O'Brien, another scenario where, could he be in line for Florida State? Who knows? But if Florida State decides to stick with Norvell financially, because you're already paying Willie Taggart $3.5 million not to coach a team, can you really afford to pay Norvell $4+ million per to go away? I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're in that in that good of a financial spot to where if they were to fire him, who could you bring in? And I know there's one that jumps right to mind. I'll talk about him in a few minutes, but that's a huge risk too. We'll talk about him again momentarily, but Florida State doesn't come knocking. Could Bill O'Brien get the nod? I mean, I know people will scrunch even their nose about O'Brien because the end of his Houston tenure in the NFL wasn't exactly the most pleasant, but differentiate Bill O'Brien, the executive making these personnel decisions for the franchise, and Bill O'Brien, the coach. Bill O'Brien, the coach, did pretty damn good in Houston. Bill O'Brien, the GM, the executive making trades, was the shits. But that's not something you got to worry about here at Miami. That's not something you'd have to worry about in the college level. And what I can tell you is, number one, right now he's on that Nick Saban rehabilitation tree that has done wonders for coaches. I mean, Steve Sarkisian looks like a different human being in Texas than he ever looked at Washington and USC. And I'm not talking about, his battle with alcoholism. God bless the guy. He overcame that. He's busted his ass. I have nothing but respect for him for that. I'm talking about coaching-wise. He's not even the same coach. I mean, this isn't 7-win Steve anymore. Bill O'Brien, to me, had a better pedigree, had a better resume than Sarkisian did. Has some experience in the college ranks, guys. I mean, he took over. Look, Bill O'Brien inherited as bad of a situation as you will see in college football when he became a head coach at Penn State. You're talking a program that goddamn near got the death penalty. Forget replacing Joe Paterno, which itself was going to be a tall task for anybody. You had to come in to that. Arguably the most disgraceful thing that we've ever seen in college football was Jerry Sandusky. Cost Paterno his job. Well, I'm not getting into that fucking debate whether Paterno knew, whether he didn't. I'm not. I've done that enough on, that's not what the point of this video is. O'Brien inherited a shitstorm of epic proportions and kept Penn State afloat. That's as good of a fucking coaching job as you'll ever see. So, yeah, Miami, if they really want to make that splash, that's the direction they go. Bill O'Brien, maybe Hugh Freeze, and I think both are attainable. Beyond that, like I said, you got the other ones, the Childwells, the Napiers, maybe. Tony Elliott. I don't want to say the bloom's off that rose. And I'm not also, Clemson, look, life after Trevor Lawrence they were going to feature hiccups. I don't necessarily think that reflects badly on Tony Elliott, though. But the question is, will Miami want to go with another assistant? Will they want to go with somebody without any head coaching experience after Diaz? I doubt it. What I do know is they need somebody, though, that's going to restore the swagger in this fucking program. They need somebody that certainly is going to go out there and at minimum, beat Florida International. At minimum, show up for a fucking bowl game against Louisiana Tech, acting like they want to be there. And at minimum, at least make the losses to ranked teams competitive. Certainly not coming in after a loss and claiming a moral victory because you almost beat a fucking team that you've beat 5 of the last 6 meetings, that you've beat 6 of your last 8 times you've played. Oh, by the way, Wrapping things up, meanwhile, up the road, Florida State. Whether or not they move on from Mike Norvell, I don't know. Should they? Look, Willie Taggart he didn't catch a break. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was the wrong move firing Taggart because it wasn't working out. So Florida State, they did what they had to do. The expectations are there. The expectations are sky high. Taggart wasn't developing, but if he's not, what the fuck is this? Losing to Jacksonville State? Willie Taggart had 5 wins in his first year at Tallahassee. He came into season 2 very much on the hot streak. Mike Norvell hasn't even reached win number 4 yet, and we're a quarter of the way through season 2. Like I said, if there's anything that's keeping this man's job afloat, it's the fact that they're paying Taggart $3.5 million to go the fuck away, and go coach down at FAU. They've paid him a mint to get lost. I don't know if they can afford to do the same with Norvell, who I believe would have a buyout that would owe him at least over $5 million per. So can they really afford $8 million plus to have 2 coaches not coach there? Can they afford not to? That's also the question. Can they afford not to fire Norvell? Because this sends a bad fucking message if they don't. And Norvell, you're talking to a guy, look, at least Taggart rubbed elbows with the right people. At least Taggart was generally liked by people at Florida State. He was liked by his players. He was liked by the boosters. Willie Taggart was as inoffensive of a human being as you will meet. Shit just didn't work out there. Mike Norvell has alienated a lot of people in Tallahassee in a very short period of time. Players, alumni, boosters. So are we at the point where Florida State can afford not to fire Norvell? They're in a screwed either way scenario. And if they do fire him, they're not going to have a whole hell of a lot of money to spend. Best case scenario for them. Could they float Deion Sanders a bone and say, hey, come back home? Deion doesn't need a shitload of money to go back. Deion doesn't need a ton of money. Deion's a made man anyway, so that's a possibility. But don't think that wouldn't come with a shitload of risks either. Sanders has very, very, very limited coaching experience, and that's at Jackson State, not to be confused with Jacksonville State, which beat them in week 2. I digress. But, that'd be risky. That'd be very risky. You'd have to surround him with pretty damn near a blank check to bring in the coaching staff of his choice, put together a dream team coaching staff. Might be something that could work. He has a swagger. He knows Florida State. He has the balls to freaking get in there and, say, hey, this shit ain't happening no more. And I don't think recruiting will ever be an issue with Deion Sanders. You're talking a bunch of Gen Xers that are having their kids recruited by one of their childhood heroes. Yeah, Deion will walk in the door and have a foot up on anyone else. So that could be something to pay attention to. But again, it all boils down to whether this school will have the financial resources to kick Norvell to the curb when they're still paying Taggart. We'll find out. Anyway, that's it, guys. 2 long videos today. I'm on a roll. 2 long videos that I didn't have to take a bunch of takes because I had simple fuck-ups that I'd probably be the only one that noticed. But hey, fun times ahead. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll talk to you soon.